Hello, my name is George Grant. I'm a GGS Pro Technical Specialist with Griffin. Today we'll be focusing on considerations for keeping a clean operation during the production season. If you should have any other additional questions, please feel free to reach out to our technical team using the contact information provided on this slide. This industry never stops, and sanitation should be viewed the same way. I encourage you to evaluate your current standard operating procedures in place during and in between crop cycles. Sanitation needs to be prioritized equally during both of these periods. However, for mid-season sanitation, we have a few different factors to consider, including the presence of plants we are growing. Sanitation is a very broad term, but essentially it requires an understanding of these five major areas of plant production. If you can implement SOPs attending to these five things, I guarantee you will help improve your operations performance, decrease shrinkage, and ultimately save money. Water is typically our friend when it comes to growing plants. However, disease uses water as an ally to spread from plant to plant. Here we have a flood floor irrigation system and overhead watering scenario. In both scenarios, one diseased plant can potentially spread to all neighboring plants during each irrigation event. In the right-hand photo, you can see xanthomonas, a bacterial leaf spot disease, spreading across these zinnias due to splashing from overhead irrigation. This scenario is all too common at some point during the season. Dead or dying plants are a breeding ground for disease. Here on the right, you can see how disease is spreading from plant to plant. It is very important to isolate and dispose of throwaways immediately off-site. You may want to also consider relocating your compost or trash pile if it is in close proximity to cooling fans of a greenhouse or a retention pond. There's a reason why we were also told to wash our hands growing up. People are great at carrying diseases from one area to another. In this scenario, we only have one path for people to walk through, and whatever disease we walk on will ultimately end up at every end of the structure eventually. Equipment is also a common way disease such as viruses can spread throughout a crop. Pruners and cutting equipment that come in contact with a diseased plant can then affect other plants if not sterilized appropriately. This is very important when working with stock plants. On the right, we have a case of bacterial fasciation with citronella. This is a very contagious and basically incurable disease which causes deformative growth, which was most likely spread throughout the crop from the stock material and thus the cuttings that came from it. Now, not all pests come in the shape of diseases or insects. Weeds are anything growing in a place where we do not want them, and they are fantastic at utilizing the resources they have available. Most of the time, the growers are the ones indirectly giving them the resources they need to thrive, such as fertilizer and ideal temperatures. Eventually, weeds can outcompete the plants we are growing for light, nutrients, water, and most importantly, space. To make things worse, they are a breeding ground for insects, diseases, and even more weeds. As we discussed earlier, water is a very important input for plant production. However, when we talk about the quality of water, it can entail a variety of things. In this presentation, we'll focus on the biological aspects of water, which includes algae, biofilm, and diseases. Algae and biofilm are incredibly adaptable, opportunistic, and naturally forming in nature. Algae, in most times, is a microscopic single-celled plant, whereas biofilm is made up of colonies of bacteria. We can view them as a weed because it utilizes the same resources weeds do and grow where we do not want them. These groups of organisms can develop on any surface that receives moisture and will wreak havoc on an operation if left unchecked. When we talk about preventing and controlling algae and biofilm, there's many different chemicals out there. Typically, these fall into the category of sanitizers, which are oftentimes oxidizing agents. These are used to kill and prevent the development of microbials, which are ultimately the precursors of biofilm and plant diseases. Sanitizers can sometimes be used when plants are present or even applied to irrigation water that goes directly onto the crop, which is why they are appropriate for mid-season sanitation needs. Just like any other pesticide, each chemical has a unique label and rates can vary based on where it is being used and why. Specifically for irrigation systems, we recommend using Sanidate 12.0 or Xerotol 2.0 as a sanitizing step. Cleaners like Strip It can be used in between crop cycles, whereas sanitizers are used during crop cycles for continuous disinfection, as well as in between crop cycles. Once again, algae and biofilm can develop on anything that comes in contact with water, such as under and on top of benches, ground fabrics, walkways, etc. Unfortunately, this is not one of those things that just go away on their own, and it only gets worse over time. Let's take a step back for a moment and distinguish between cleaners and sanitizers. Cleaners are typically made out of strong acids and bases in combination with surfactants. They are primarily used as the first step in between crop cycles to physically remove plant debris, mineral scale, large amounts of algae, and biofilm. They are then followed up with a sanitation step using a sanitizer, which is typically once again an oxidizer. It's expressly important when using cleaners they do not come in contact with plant material. That's why we typically use them in between crop cycles. To paraphrase Rick Yates, even the best sanitizer will fail if the proper cleaning steps have not been done first. The use of foaming to assist in sanitizer applications is increasing in popularity for several reasons. First off, it makes chemical applications more fun for employees. More importantly, it enhances chemical efficacy by increasing contact time to applied areas. Foam can adhere to vertical surfaces, where spray solution will have a tendency to drip downward. Foam also allows employees to visually see where they've applied, which will improve the thoroughness of each application and prevent accidental contact with plant material. Thank you again for watching this video. If you should have any additional questions, please reach out to our GGS Pro team or your local sales representative. If you should have any topics you'd like us to present on in the future, we would really appreciate your suggestions. Thank you.